Hi guys, welcome to the discussion for Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene. Yeah,
You got all four names. Way to
yeah.
go.
We're second perspective. I'm Paul Weston, and I'm going to speak for himself.
Hey, I'm Mitchell Allen.
There you go.
It's a big moment. I get
Yeah,
to say my own name.
it's always different. Like with Torin, he
I
never.
know.
It's so different with every person. Like Nathan's always like right
Yeah,
on the ball saying his name. Torin sometimes does, sometimes doesn't. Anyways, people don't care about this.
it's fine.
Um, Basically, we were doing a QQ or a discussion on a wonderful film. If you haven't seen it, this discussion is for a post viewing experience kind of thing. So pause this, go see it, and then come back and join us. I think that was enough time for them to leave. So, anyways,
Yeah,
Mitch, let's just get right into it.
sure.
You and I have been talking about this a fair amount off camera, off recording. What like of all the things that we want to talk about, what sort of brings up or comes up first for you?
I mean, for me, I guess it's just one of the biggest strengths, and one of the most innovative things about like the film is how it plays with time.
Mm-hmm.
For me, one of the coolest things you can do in a movie is you can play with space and time. And in this movie, you're in two different like places at any one time. Like you sort of branch out of that a couple times, but for the most part, you're either in a beach house or you're in a farmhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of that, like you can kind of establish the spaces pretty well. So how do you play with that? And the filmmaker makes a really interesting decision to keep you guessing as to where and when you are, and whether we're seeing a dream or whether we're seeing like everything is just constantly being played with in terms of
Well, the one thing
the
I thought was really
setting.
interesting. Yeah, sorry. It's the
Yeah.
one thing I thought, and you might be able to riff off this. Is like the first couple cuts were subtle in its nature, right? Like they were like very direct, like match cuts or smash cuts or something like that. Not smash cuts, but just like very simple match cuts or
Yes.
that sort of thing. And they got more aggressive with those kind of changes the further down the film went,
Yeah.
right? And I was just curious, like, did it work for you the whole time, or were there like any points that you thought didn't,
Yeah.
or
Well, it's actually one of the weirdest things because it's easily one of the strongest devices, and like especially by the end you see why they have to keep like drilling it in your head that you can't know what is what. But then there's a couple times just towards the middle, and I can't exactly pinpoint what, but you know the device is coming. You know they're like, going to like fade into a hallway or show the back of someone's head, and then someone's going to turn around, it's going to be a different person, and it's almost like, okay, we know the trick. Now what? Like let's move on from here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's more repetition, the repetition of it that may get on my nerves rather than the application of it. Because I think usually it's really beautifully done.
One of my favorite ones, and I knew it was a trick, but it still was really powerful, is when Martha. I'm using, by the way, actually, let's talk about it after a certain point, but like what name we should use and why and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because I think there's an actually really interesting discussion there to be had with the themes.
Great title, by the way.
Yeah. But before I lose my train of thought,
Sure.
my favorite one of the time changing cuts was when she was in the bathroom near the end of the film, and she's hiding and crying for some reason. Near and in the beach house, and then she says, "It's Zoe. Can I come in?"
Yes.
And she doesn't change at all. She's in the beach house, but reacting to the farmhouse stuff, and so. And then he comes in, and then it changes back into the farmhouse, and it's just sort of a very seamless sort of. I don't know. I think the reason why, I think the how or why these things work are purely on sort of a emotional level. Like if there's the emotional through line works, then most of these cuts will work. And I think a film that you're gonna be a little bit surprised I bring this up for is Wolf of Wall Street.
Okay.
And Wolf of Wall Street.
Tell me how that works. But sure, go ahead.
Wolf of Wall Street has a whole bunch of cuts where it's like at one point Leo's like way up here, right? And then literally the very next cut, it's other hand, he's bent over.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But the reason it works, and our eyes don't pick it up or anything, is that the same intensity, energy, emotional through line, whatever, is following through each cut, right?
Yeah.
And so the reason why these cuts work in Wolf of Wall Street and in any film, and especially in I don't want to say the whole name, and this film is because that's what connects it. Even though we're jumping through time and space, it's because of the emotional through line. And I feel like that's what a lot of films get wrong, right? And I just think these are the things, these subtle pieces of filmmaking are, for me, a sign of what a good director is. And I'm actually going to briefly branch off to something because I'm really interested in your thoughts, because I have this issue in my brain a lot, and it's, how do you decide who wins Best Director in Oscars or anything like that? Right?
We're really just getting.
Well, and I think this is and I think this is something, one, that's just interesting for me, but interesting for people who are probably watching this.
How do you win Best Director?
Right, and like one of the things that I've started to learn is that like the consistent use of these sort of little, not director tricks, but tools, right? Like emotional through lines, through cuts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like so much of a story is based on writing or cinematography and all sort of stuff. And so like how do you...
Well, I think what it is for me, the sign of a really good director is when you can look at the choices that they've made and you completely understand why they've made them. Even if you don't fully agree, or even if it doesn't like impact you, you can look at, I think for me, the directorial choices in this film, and you understand exactly why
it
is gone for it.
Well,
Sorry?
Pick one in this film that you...
Pick one choice in this film?
Yeah.
Like why do we never know what actually transpired before Martha went into the cult? Like, why do we not know really what happened in her family?
I'm going to stop you right there for a brief moment.
Sure.
And it doesn't quite work with this film because it's a writer-director.
Okay,
but I'm going to say, like, this...
Do you think that's more of a writer's thing?
That's a writer's thing, right? And like,
okay, fine. So sorry. Yeah, that was... No, that was my bad. So directorially...
But did you see how I have difficulty with this? And
no, it's true because they're so intertwined, right? Like, and that's actually interesting to think about, because the writer is conceptualizing not only what the story is, but how this feels, like what this looks like, which sometimes you'll write something and then, you give it to a director and the film becomes a little bit different because they're imposing their perspective on it. But it's really all one perspective coming together to make this film. So does that make writer-directors better because they have the A to B sort of like through line with their own process, or is it just...
My argument to that is that if like we came up with a new structure for QQ in the review, right, which I think is working better, and that
I think so.
Came from a different person. It came from Torn, kind of going on, but then I grabbed it and I went, oh, it sparked something in me, right? So like sometimes, like I've realized in my own work that I'm not always necessarily the best person to start something, but I'm usually pretty good once it gets sparked by something. So I don't know that writing and writer-directors are necessarily better than a different writer and a different director. But like the reason I bring up with this whole how do you pick the best director? It's like, okay, you have, they say this is the only film he's ever done, right? And how do you know that he's a great director versus say like Christopher Nolan? You see him do that he's probably a pretty good director because you've seen a whole bunch of his different films, and that's the only other way that I can think of, like, oh, how do I know this is a really good director versus a guy who got lucky with a script? It's like
it's a expectation,
right? Yeah. It's like he's consistently been good through a whole bunch of films, right? So when I watch a film, like this is the only one that I've seen, how do I know he's not just a really good writer and he's his directing's subpar? Like, how do you... I just feel like it's so hard to know.
You know what? I also think it has a lot to do with the not only like what you choose, but who you choose to work with and what things you choose to work with. So he's hired, I think, a great like technical crew and dramatic crew. I mean, he's got a really, I think, great cast who is willing to like. There's stuff where Elizabeth Olsen, who is great in this movie, but
definitely the most talented of the Olsens.
Just really, well, first of all, not even close. Like, it is miles ahead. But I mean, there's stuff where Elizabeth Olsen will just jump on the counter,
Mm.
and Sarah Paulson will say like, "Get off the counter."
Mm.
And I think with a worse actor, you have someone jumping on the counter and just doing it because it's in the script.
Mm.
But with each action that Martha does, you can feel a real sense of like work put into why is she doing this? Why is she, making these decisions and saying these things? And you just get the sense that there's commitment there. So I think he's chosen a lot of really good people, and also a cinematographer to work with that really bring out the best of what this movie is. I think, yeah.
So thank you for going on my little trip through the Oscar land. But I do think
Sure.
this is why we should be doing Kikus and like having these rants, and
Yeah.
That's what's
Yeah.
interesting, right?
I at loss for words, Paul.
Well, I just there's so much I want to talk about. Like,
I know.
Why don't we talk about sort of? I'm really curious to like what like in specifics, like what you and I actually talked about the part that freaked me out the most, because this film it freaked me out. Like it scared me.
First of all, like I watched this and I was like, I mean, suitably scared. I mean, it's very depressing, but also really frightening. Like you're always watching it and you're just waiting for someone to stab not one of the characters in the movie, but you.
Yeah.
You're just waiting to be who knows, right? I mean, it's really brings you into the world. But after about an hour of not watching it, I'm like, okay, cool, and I move on to the next thing. I get a text from Paul the next morning after he watches it, and he's like, I could not sleep. Like, I was just shaken by this. I think it has the power to do that. Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I'm getting a bit of a reputation from Mitch and from Nathan, where it's like I tend to not enjoy sort of these more subtle, more elusive films where it's not, because like for a period of time in my life, I wanted my stories to be very clear and succinct, and like each plot point led to another and all that sort of stuff. And like to a point, I still think that's the superior storytelling, and I think that's in these films. But like in the last, I don't know, 6 months or something, I've gotten a lot more emotionally open to these films. But yeah, like I went to bed thinking about this film, and the first thought I had, I was waking up, was this film. And the image that freaked me out the most, and this includes watching someone getting stabbed, watching people getting raped, and not only that, but just I found the right word. Sorry, I was disturbed. I don't know if I was necessarily frightened.
Yeah,
but I was disturbed.
Sorry, it is disturbing.
That's the word I've been looking
unsettling.
For. Right, I was unsettled, disturbed, and like the second thing that came closest was like the whole thing of like I'm jealous about that you got your first time. It's the cleansing, the pain.
That scene is amazing. In fact, it actually, you know what? That's one of my favorite scenes because it just what it does is it carries like the through line of like the performances of like those women that she's been living with. So you're still getting the feeling that she's been living in the same house, but now you're getting a taste of what's in their head, like what's really in their head. Not just like, oh, come with us, we're a family, but what really they've been taught over who knows how long they've been there.
Well, this film does such a good job of depicting a very sort of realistic scenario of like how people, because so often people are like how could someone stay in a cult and do all these things, and like because there's nobody that's holding the gun to somebody's head except for one scene. Where there's why wouldn't people just leave? But the filmmaker does a very good job of showing in a very slow, deliberate way of like this is how people get sucked in. Like, you need to trust us. You need to trust us. She literally gets drugged, right?
Yeah.
She gets raped.
Yeah.
And then she thinks, and immediately she has like what we think would be the proper response, being like, "This is fucked up. This is wrong." Immediately, what happens right after that is they go like, "It's true." I wrote down the words that she says. It's not bad. It's truly good. And how do you like? I can see in a state where you're so fragile, you're so broken that you're like I think I just got raped. But if I think, no, it's truly great, it's
Yeah,
awesome,
yeah,
then kind of sort of the bad thing didn't happen to me.
right,
Great,
right.
fantastic. I've been given an out, and
But
like that all of a sudden.
you've been given a new spin. I mean,
Hmm,
it's not only denial, but it's like
hmm,
it's plausible deniability
hmm,
that you're giving yourself a way out
hmm,
emotionally, but also just logically.
hmm,
Like, oh, if he's willingly, doing something great with all of these women,
hmm,
then I am one of the lucky few,
hmm,
rather than, oh God,
hmm,
what is
hmm,
going on around me? This is
hmm,
a hellhole. You
hmm,
have to give yourself a reason to
hmm.
live there,
Yeah.
or else you have
Hmm,
wasted your time. I mean, I was watching Going Clear, which is a Scientology documentary for those who haven't seen it,
hmm,
and Paul Haggis, who's the director of Crash, was a Scientologist for years, and he goes, at one point, like, he's given a piece of information that's like totally ludicrous,
hmm,
and the rest of the church believes it, and he says he had to believe in it, or else he would have realized he'd wasted so much money and time.
hmm,
And that is what it is. It's just plausible deniability
hmm.
that you have to push against it.
Yeah.
And I found the way that they set that up was just really, really strong and really felt true, I think,
Yeah.
to how many cases of those.
I think just the more I talk about this film, the more I sort of admire it because there's
Mm,
so many things that could have fallen through or not worked, whatever. Like those time cuts could have easily not worked.
mm,
There's sort of slow, deliberate pace where it's like literally at a farmhouse and a beach house, and the
yeah,
plot is like the storyline is literally someone comes back to his sister, can't get over demons, goes to crazy house. Like
yeah,
that's a really that could be a really boring, shitty,
yeah,
predictable timeline, and um, there are so many plot holes and pitfalls, and he teeters on every single
yeah. He really pushes you to the edge.
bit,
It's true.
and he walks on this fine line of it works and it doesn't. He walk, he does walk just a lot better than whoever
We're
directed
going to go
actual
back to
walk.
that, aren't we? Oh, man.
But anyways,
Uh,
I digress.
yeah.
But like that's and like yeah, it's because we watch a lot of. I mean, you and I talk a lot about films that like it could have done well
Mhm.
like Pawn Sacrifice. Like there's a really interesting story there, and if they had done certain things, it would have worked out. Um, this is a film where
Yeah.
it took those risks and it worked out, and it's just maybe I'm just deprived of good films lately, but like.
Maybe. Well, what I think really helps is that just psychologically, like, I mean, like I mentioned in the moment where Elizabeth Olsen jumps into her counter, where she just takes off all her clothes, and then all of a sudden Sarah Paulson is yelling at her.
Mm,
I mean, it feels like they've really paid attention to the details of what it's like to have PTSD and what it's like to be in a traumatic situation.
mm,
By the way, what did you? Because we're talking, I notice our discussion is sort of, and
mm,
naturally our
mm,
discussion is going to fall towards
mm,
the farmhouse stuff and
mm,
the cult stuff. But what did you think of the stuff at the beach house
mm,
and those scenes and how they played into the narrative? Because
mm.
they're tonally a little different, but they play really nicely too.
Well, I thought they found the right moment, or at least a good moment for it to be the sort of the tipping point of being like, okay, get out. Like you need to go you need to get professional help, and that's when she's being chased by oh god, I'm gonna take a gamble and say his
Yeah,
name is Ted. Um,
sure. You know what? I'm not even going to look this up. Let's call him Ted from now on. We're referring
because we're
to
professionals.
we're referring to the husband in this film at the beach house,
Yeah,
just so we all know. But
mm,
from now on, his name is Ted. I don't care
yeah.
what his name actually is.
So,
Yeah.
so when Ted's chasing her and she kicks him down the stairs,
Hmm.
um, that's sort of the time when she's like actually honestly violent, and like that's
Yeah.
the tipping point for Sarah Paulson's character.
Yeah.
I thought that was sort of really well chosen, because oops, they found that mark, then they could go, okay, let's do everything we can right before it to
Hmm.
really raise tension with Ted. Sort of really test the love and the patience of Sarah Paulson's character, because like she totally loses it on Mike, the bartender.
Oh God, that
Right?
is another
Mm,
another beautiful scene. Just because, and that
mm,
scene is also just so patient
mm,
in terms of something is going to happen as soon as
mm,
she walks out of the door into that party,
mm,
and it just lets you take its time, and it's just so true to how a mind with that sort of trauma would work, is that it would just try to accept what's around it and find the first clue of how it can rebel in a way, and just find the way to slip back into it. It was fascinating. The whole thing was just so fascinating to watch.
Yeah, well, I thought they did a really good job of picking sort of those moments where she cracks, because two other ones that stand out is like when she suddenly just goes into the bedroom when they start having sex, and you realize that gets justified later when you realize they all sleep together and they all have sex in the same room. And one that I thought was really sort of interesting, and just sort of it raised the sort of level of just of my sort of disturbed nature, but also was sort of really profound, not profound, but just impactful, was that when she slept on the floor, woke up, and peed herself.
Yeah,
right.
Because it's just because there's something about that. What is happening before that? I'm trying to remember what the not the dream, the flashback was, but right before it, because it's such a tense, moody, almost underplayed scene, and then all of a sudden you just have this very bold image of urine in your face, and it's right there. I mean,
well, and the thing I really like too is that she ends up taking the dress, first instant I'm like, okay, well, how is she gonna, is she gonna go to the washroom and is she gonna try to scrub it all stuff? Right. What she do? She puts it under the fucking bed.
Right, under the bed,
which is crazy, but totally makes sense.
Of course, it's just what? Not now. It's the non-dialogue version of I can't do this right now, and yet she has to do something about it eventually, and that's really what the film tries to lead up to. Is she just has to confront this, and it's just that fear of I can't.
Well, the thing too is that the more that I'm talking, the more I realize the thing that the film does is it. If it goes straight to her peeing herself and putting it on the bed, we wouldn't take that moment. We would think it ridiculous or whatever. And it does a really good job of finding the moments that are right up to our line of suspension of disbelief, and find the moment right up to it and just nudging it, and then just find another one and pushing it, so that by the end of the film we get to these crazy things that are absolutely out of just balls crazy, but we still believe it because we've been sort of trained or manipulated throughout the film to sort of get and believe these moments. Right?
Do you know what it's like?
What?
Do you know what it's like? It's like cult practice.
Fuck.
The film is training us. The film is training us to understand it and appreciate it the same way a charismatic leader might want us to get sucked into it, and then we're prisoner.
Yeah.
One of my favorite scenes of the entire movie is one that is so gentle and so unassuming, and it's delivered, I'd say, probably 5 minutes after the really, really horrifying rape scene.
Oh,
but
it
is exactly that image, Paul. Yeah. And it is John Hawkes, who's spectacular in this film, by the way. I mean, it's a perfect choice for the leader of this cult. But he sits down and he plays. First of all, this was interesting because I researched this. Is that it's not an original song?
Yeah.
Now
I originally thought it was too.
Because I would think many viewers would think, oh, it's an original song that he wrote about Marcy, and that's kind of weird. But it turns out it's written by a very low-key artist, that sort of faded into obscurity years and years ago. But he essentially is playing the song for the entire runtime, and it's 5 minutes, and the shots are just twofold. It's a medium on her that doesn't move that much, and then there's a pushing in shot on him while he plays, and all it does is it just allows you to feel the moment and feel what we believe might be the genuine love between that group. And it just gives us a moment of pause before everything just really falls to shit. And it's just so beautifully controlled, I thought.
You know what's really interesting is that whole time that scene was happening, I had a huge sense of dread. Because the first thing I thought is man, this song's beautiful. It sounds really good, right? But the whole time I was watching that, I kept thinking of the lyrics she's just a picture on my wall. I'm does not sound like the right sort of lyrics. It seems strange.
Yeah.
and it literally just happened after rape. So you're already uneasy when those two are in the scene together, because this is sort of his first outright attack on Martha. And,
right. Who he calls Marcy May.
Yeah.
He's actually I would actually argue the first attack that he does is he renames her because he claims her in that moment, and that's something that I've been reading, like the Jonestown massacres and things like that. But they renamed their followers. They branded them essentially.
Yeah. Well, what's really neat is that he actually does that to every single girl.
Yeah.
Right.
But that was the moment I knew. As soon as he said, "You look like a Marcy May," I said, "That's it. You've destroyed her entire life because now you own her. Yeah. You have her name."
Well, we're getting in close to that time. So, do you have any closing thoughts before we head out?
Yeah. I would say the only other thing, it's a little repetitive towards the middle, but the only other thing that bugged me a little bit is, because there's so many dimensional characters, like even the way that the women talk to each other and the men in the farmhouse, and you just get a sense that there's so much backstory between Martha and her sister. There's just one character that sticks out like a sore thumb, only because he's just not great. And it's
average.
Yeah,
which makes him stick out.
It's the husband. Yeah. Is Ted, in fact, is what we renamed him because and that's the thing. We don't remember his name. There isn't a lot about him besides he's British and he's rich and he's proud that he's British and rich. And
for me, there's did a fine job with what he had, but I think it was in the script that had its sort of strength.
It's just, for me, it's just when you have so much strength in there and you have a character that really just doesn't add anything, it's a bit of a shame.
Although, to be fair, he did need to be there.
As a dramatic device for sure. Yeah, so I mean, at the same time, not the worst, just not up to par with the rest for me.
Which is really just giving the film more praise.
What do you think happened in the end, Paul? Because, I mean, is there an answer, or is it just?
Yeah, I know I'm trying to keep these discussions shorter, but
I know.
The short answer of what I think happened is, I don't care. I think the thing that I do care about and that I was left with, and the reason why I loved it so much, is that I actually wrote in my book and I said, it doesn't matter if it's real or not. What matters is that it's real to her. She will always.
That's interesting.
She will always be looking over her shoulder. That's what was important to me at the end. So it doesn't matter.
Well, that's interesting.
That. So that's
because it occurred to me that it will always follow her was there, but. You know what? That's cool. That it's real to her. That it's a valid thing that she'll have to deal with, and that she can finally contend with realistically. Because originally, I thought that it was just the synthesis of those two realities. Finally, that we finally saw a moment in which both the farmhouse and the beach house are just one, and now there is no escaping it. We were on two things at once, and we didn't know where we were, and now we are only in one. Yeah. Now we are only in one, and you have to be there. So you have to be present in that and figure out what's going on with that.
Yeah, overall, I feel like it's giving less hope than more hope for, but
maybe, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Other than that, I think it's a good time to end our discussion here. It was a rather heatful, exciting one, but again, this is Second Perspective. I'm Paul Weston, and over there is a big boy.
Whoa, Mitchell. Big boy!
Yeah, what's your name?
I like that. Oh wait, I mean, maybe we can find a better one, but it's not bad. Okay.
So that's Mitch Allen, and join us on the next one, guys.
No, big boy. Say it.
The big boy.
Okay, good. No.
All right. Take care, guys.
Bye, guys.